Hey everyone, welcome back to my Range Rover Sport rebuild. After getting the truck back on the road and spending more time on the highway, there were certain speeds and bumps that would make the truck all wobbly. Also, the suspension gets a little droopy overnight on the front passenger side, so today we're going to fix that. Let's get to it. The first thing you need to do to replace the air springs on the Range Rover Sport is to get it up in the air. And we'll get the wheel off, and that should give us some access. Inside it does mount in here, so we'll have to work in there. Before we remove anything, we're using our scan tool to deflate the air springs. If you have the option to deflate only the air springs and not the reservoir, it'll save some time when you re-enable the system because it'll refill the shocks from the reservoir rather than refilling everything from empty. Our tool has us turn the hazards on as part of the process. I highly recommend using a scan tool to vent the system since the pressures involved are really high. There should still be a tiny bit of pressure in the system, so when we do disconnect the air line from the strut, we'll want to make sure we go slowly, let the air vent out, and then disconnect it completely. So up here, these are 15mm nuts on the studs, and I was actually able to break them free using a regular 15mm wrench. For the back one, you kind of got to go by feel, and I actually ended up using this side just to break it free. And then there's just enough room to just wiggle this back and forth to get it undone. So, once you're there, you can just get those going. And we'll work them out. The back one's the one that's going to be the slowest, because there's the air line back there. There's the air line, and the other nut is right there. That one's a little harder to get to, but if you work carefully, you can do it. And if you have more trouble, just you can get a longer wrench. That should give you a little more leverage. But I mean, fortunately, this truck lived most of its life in Georgia, so there's very little rust that you might see in other places. For the rear one, once you get it on, you're only going to be able to move it like one click at a time on the ratchet, but you can get it out. So I'll be back when I take those out. So we've got our nuts out here. There's 3 right there. We're leaving the air line connected for now. We'll be able to access it better once we drop this down. But to do that, we've got nut and bolt. So the bolt side here is 21mm. And on the nut side here is 24. It's gonna go the other way.
What'd you say?
I'll have to just lean on this or have you.
I can do it. I can hold it.
Are you ready?
Yep.
Not bad, not bad. I'd say that was pretty easy, which is good. A little mallet here. Try to knock that out. Be sure to support the strut as you remove the lower bolt.
I can hold this.
Hold that, yeah. Here you can see the air line. We don't want to put too much stress on it, so we're disconnecting it next. You could also try to removing it before dropping the strut, but it's tight working up there. We'll use a 12mm wrench to remove it, and watch out for the remaining pressure.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
It's relaxing.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Oh.
let it drop down.
Do you want me to pull it out?
Angle it.
Towards the front.
Not damage anything.
Got it.
Oh boy, that's heavy.
Let's look here. This 15 November 2005. This is the original air strut for the truck, which is a 2006. 185,000 miles until it actually was time to replace it. So that's some pretty good durability. Might not be the same on all trucks, but hey, that's really good. Our replacement is also a Delphi. So, yeah. So there are two main reasons we're replacing this strut. One that we saw earlier is that the passenger side loses height when the truck is parked, and the second is that when we drive over bumps in the road, the truck would get unsettled and wander a little bit. And you can see the bushing's tired too, it's split here. Oh, I think I see it.
Yep.
Oh yeah, there's a split there.
Yeah, so you use that to push that apart, and you'll be able to take the knurl off, and then you take the nut off.
Here, hold this. And that should come down off.
You see?
I see it. I got it. Okay. So this piece we broke free to release the airline from the strut. And there's this little open ring that kind of lives right underneath. Right here that you're gonna have to spread apart a little bit to separate from this piece, from the nut. Then when you wiggle that out, you can slide this off the airline. So the way this works is the little collar will grab onto the airline when you pull it up and lock into the fitting, and that's why we have to spread it apart to remove it. So right here, about an inch up from the bottom, you see the little flare, and that's the mark for how far in this line is going to go into this. So when we bring up the part, the strut, we'll pop that in, kind of secure it in, and then we'll slide it up. So you'll see it can only go in one place. There's an opening here, and then there's the 3 holes for the studs, which means this can only fit in one way. So just make sure you keep that in mind when you're lining it up. So before we bring it up, this is a plug. We're going to be taking it out. Well, this is probably because there's a vacuum in there or something, or a gas, inert
Nice.
gas. Yeah. Here I'm pushing the airline into the fitting. And then push it up a tiny bit.
No, I think it's hitting the other end because it doesn't look. Just tap the bottom gently. That does come through.
Yeah, that's it. So now what we have to do is raise up the control arm so that the studs up here will go into place. So I'm using a little jack, stacked on some wood to just raise it up enough. Okay, go ahead. Yeah, that's good. It's a little hard to see, but there's a bracket that goes here that connects to this, over this stud here, and that holds that heat shield in place. You can kind of see it there. I'll move the light around. There, yeah. So I'm gonna get the nuts started by hand up there.
Now, since these don't have, I should be thinking
All right, I'm gonna reach in, just make sure this air line is, yeah, it's where it was. I think we're good. I'll just push it down a little. Okay. Yep, that's good. Let's push it down. Now we just have to do the bottom, I guess. Yep. Tighten up the bottom.
Yeah.
This nut back on the back of the bolt. Get that started right in. Okay, let's look. Our nut and bolt that hold the lower part of the strut to the control arm. The manual says 300 Newton meters. So you could probably go with an impact. I don't know if necessarily I'd recommend that. Okay. I guess it's gonna have to be from here. We'll probably need a regular one to tighten it up first. We're almost at 200. Okay, I think I saw the red light.
Perfect.
Yes. That's it. That's the job. It's actually not too crazy.
Done.
Well, it's not done.
Remember, we have to.
Oh, I know. We have to put the wheel on and test everything.
Well, remember, there's also the very important part of re-enabling your suspension.
Yeah, that's true. When it's on the ground, we'll torque it to spec, but before that, we have to make sure the air system's refilled and everything's in working order. If you're using quick jacks or a lift, you can avoid suspension error messages if you don't lower the truck all the way down before re-enabling the air suspension. As the truck airs back up, it'll rise off the lift and you can lower it completely. Suspension enable. That's coming up already in the back and in the front. Okay, I'll lower the quick jacks.
Go ahead.
So now you're just waiting for the air tank to fill up. It went up right away, which is nice.
I'm not surprised. It should.
Yeah, I didn't know how long it would take to, you know,
That's because we didn't empty the reservoirs.
Oh, okay. So it was able to just fill everything up real quick.
And I had seen that as a tip. Someone was like, if you have a tool that will allow you to empty your springs separate from the reservoirs,
Do that.
just do the springs.
Okay.
Because otherwise it's
It'll
going to
take forever. Yeah, it's had the air in the reservoir, it just into everything, and then we're good. Set it back to regular.
Yep.
Cool. That's good. Now it's time to torque these lug nuts to spec. And one of the tips I have is get a chock, put it to the right, because you're going to be tightening. And then when you go to torque it, it won't roll the truck forward. It'll just stop there, and you can get a better leverage on it. That's 140 Newton meters, which is 103 foot-pounds. Check them. And that's it. Now with the front right strut done, I want to call out that Land Rover recommends that you replace the struts in pairs, either the front axle or the rear axle, or all four. That's the ideal process for any air suspension, so that you don't end up doing the job again and again as each corner wears out. But in the real world, you might just have time to do one, or maybe a shock blows out and the others are fine, so that's how we did it in this video. We've replaced the front right strut, so now we're going to replace the rear right, and we'll do the left side off camera. This way you can see that you can successfully replace one at a time, and it won't cause any suspension system issues. So let's get to the rear. So we're back doing air strut suspension combo. It's in the Range Rover Sport L320. This is one whole unit, shock strut, like shock absorber, airbag, air spring. And it's very similar to the front procedure in that there's 3 15mm nuts on the top. See it back there, there. And the airline right here, there's a little bit more room, but still not crazy. At the bottom it's held in here. We've got this side is a 21. And if I'm not mistaken, all the way over here is the other side of the bolt, which is a 24 on the nut side here. So, fortunately, these are all really quite accessible, which is nice. And up there, I was able to get in, break it free with a wrench. And what is much better than in the front here is that you can actually reach in back here, and then you can manipulate your wrench from the backside if your hands and arms aren't too big, and then you can work on it there. And so instead of being a tiny space, you actually have a slightly bigger space, and you can reach from the back. So it should be a little easier than the front, which is nice. Now we're gonna use our scan tool to evacuate all the air from this corner, and that'll let us, well, it just makes it safer when we break the line off or pop the line off, which we will do once we've dropped it down. So for the airline here, you could either remove this 10mm, I think it's 10, brass fitting for the airline. You could remove it beforehand or after, once you've dropped it down, and work on it there. So what I'm doing is actually, I'm gonna remove that in place since I have small enough hands to work in here, but it's up to you. So that is a 12mm brass fitting in there. I'm gonna finish loosening these up using a ratcheting wrench. Oh, can you get a mallet?
Yep.
Came off on this side, just held it on the other side. Now I'm gonna knock it out. Hopefully it won't just fall out, but I guess it's not a big deal if it does because I already disconnected the airline. Let's say it's already dropped mostly out now. Try to hold it from the bottom. There we go. I guess I can just let it. Yeah. No. Oh. I got it. Okay. Yeah. Okay. The same as the front, we have to release that little knurl, I guess is what it's called. Thank you. Be careful not to damage the line while removing the old fitting. And now we're ready to put in the new strut.
Okay, I can help guide from the top. There we go, just push up. There we go. Hang on, let me just... Whoop. Okay. No, don't cross thread. Don't do that. Okay, hang on. Okay, there's one in. There's two in. But it doesn't have a lot of threads. Could you push up a little more? Perfect. Okay, it's got more threads. All right.
Leaving the top nuts loose can help fit the lower strut bolt, though if you have help you may be able to wait to put the nuts on until the lower bolt is in. We have our bottom bolt through. Now we're going to tighten those up. Ideally you want to put the bottom bolt first, but that's fine. Now there's a torque spec for the top nuts, but unfortunately I don't have a wrench that will fit in there, so I'm just going to have to get it tight. And I was able to get it to break it free with a wrench this length, so if I put comparable strength in there, we should be good. It's not optimal, but it's what we can do. I'm gonna hold the other side with the 21. Wrong way. Oops. Get it started by hand. Now, as you can see here on the airline, there's a little bump on it, and that is almost to where we're going to slot it in to the new fitting that is pre-installed on the shock. So we're going to push that in, straight up and down, push it in, push it in, push it in, and then once you're far enough, you pull up, you can see it's locked. And that means we are all set. Yep, that's locked in. So the lower bolt torque spec is 300 Newton meters or 221 foot-pounds, and the upper nut torque spec, if you're able to torque that down with maybe some sort of special torque wrench, is 63 Newton meters or 46 foot-pounds. So let's do the 300 on the bottom. Again, holding the other side with the 21. Yeah, it should be good. I'm using a little extension on the torque wrench. Oh, almost there. Ah, okay. Like, that's enough force to compress the shock. Woo. Lift the hole. We are done. I think I've already covered this, but for the lug nuts, I recommend getting the replacements that are solid metal instead of the sheath over it that kind of expands. But yeah. Now, just like before, we'll lower the truck partway before re-enabling the air suspension.
Okay, yeah, lower it.
There we go. Then, we'll torque the wheel lug nuts to spec, and just because it's cool, we'll go from the highest suspension setting to the lowest.
Access height is on the floor.
Yeah.
Alright, and then
It's like a tall wagon. And that's regular?
yep.
There's a secret lower height than access height.
Yeah, lock.
Yeah. Okay, it's not that secret. And then there's a secret higher height too.
Yes.
With the struts replaced, the truck is driving like a Range Rover again. Smooth, stable, and quiet. Now, as you can see, the old shocks were really worn out, and I shouldn't be able to push them down this easily. Now, a nice bonus is that the truck holds air way better overnight. We'd still notice it dropping a little if we leave it for a couple of days, so in a future video, we're going to rebuild the valve blocks, so stay tuned for that. Now, some people in the comments suggested that we should replace the suspension bushings based on the mileage, which isn't a bad idea, but we inspected them and they're still good, so the juice wasn't worth the squeeze this time. We'll keep an eye on them, and when the time comes, we'll make a video. In the meantime, the Range Rover has been marking its territory again, dripping all over the driveway, so it's time to deal with that leak under the truck. It's not better, and it's probably worse at this point. Next week, you'll find out all about it, and it's something even Range Rover specialists haven't seen before. Let me know what you think it is in the comments, or how bad you think it's going to be. Be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.